Okay, I'm putting that down. Hey, BookTube, welcome to Jackie's Literary Corner. I am Jackie. So I'm going back to work tomorrow, so I thought I would do kind of a literary update. And it is rainstorming right now, although I think it slowed down. I think it stopped. And I almost wasn't going to be able to do this video because we lost the internet, which really sucks because since we have YouTube TV, if we lose the internet, we will lose TV and we won't be able to watch TV as well. And we still have electricity, so if we did not have YouTube TV and had regular cable, then we still could have probably watched TV. We just couldn't go on the internet. And thankfully, we got it back. So I'm very happy about that because I live in the 21st century and I could not live without the internet. So like I said, I'm going back to work tomorrow, and then, it looks like, from what I've gotten so far on my schedule, it looks like one of those weeks where I'm going to have, work every other day. So, which I always find that kind of amusing whenever they assign me on, an every other day schedule. But, anyway, as you can see, I read quite a bit. I'm still on a roll at reading a lot, making sure I read a lot during the month. And that's partly because now, if I read more bigger books, like some of the books I'm hoping to read this summer, I probably won't read as much during the 3 months. But I'm going to try to read most of the books that you guys saw in my video on my summer TBR. Okay, so let's talk about what I read this month. My birthday month, actually. So, let's see, what was the... So first book I finished was a classic because I decided I needed to read some classics this month, and start with those because it's so easy for me to go straight to a fantasy, and but I love other genres. I love classics or books that are considered classic, which I know. Recently, I've saw a lot of videos of people saying classics is not a genre because they're just old books. But it's just gotten to habit. I guess it's the same thing as people calling YA a genre, and that kind of bothers me. So maybe that makes me a bit of a hypocrite because I always call classics. I kind of give them the label of genre, and I don't like it when people give YA the label of genre when it's not a genre. It's a category. It's a demographic category. But anyway, but just for the sake of argument, and also to because I kind of like having a separate classics category. I don't know why. Maybe to make myself feel a little less hypocritical, maybe I could just label them categories instead of... But then, with adult and the demographic category. And well, anyway, enough rambling. Oh my god, so it's doing that thing where... Sorry, I'm getting distracted here, but the weather is doing that thing where, it gets really, really sunny all of a sudden, but it's still raining. That's apparently there's a saying that goes with that, which is the devil is beating his wife. Which I guess maybe that's Hades and Persephone. I do not know. But I find that a very funny little expression. I don't know who says that. We looked it up, the kind of people who say that, but I don't remember what it was. Okay, anyway, so let's actually start talking about the books. Okay, so, like I said, the first book I read was a classic, and it is Age of Innocence by Edith Wharton. So I've read Edith Wharton before. I read it when I took a college American literature class. At the time, I was like, oh, this is stupid, I don't like this. But which is funny because it was only a few years ago. But it might have been 10, I don't know. I don't remember how old I was at the time I took that class. I have to think about that. And I was very much disappointed by we read Ethan Frome, and I was like, that's it, that's so depressing. But now that I'm a little bit older, I have more respect for that story, and I love her writing. And this is one of her novels, Age of Innocence, and it is about this guy named Newland Archer, a New York lawyer, and he is happily engaged to May Welland, who is very pretty. She's the ideal woman of the time period of society. She's very kind. there's nothing that she's well-to-do, comes from a good family, nothing wrong with her, and they're pretty content at first until May's cousin Ellen Olenska, who is a countess, she's married to Count Olensky, shows up in New York to come for a visit, and she has quite the reputation. She dresses inappropriately. Now, of course, this is like, let me see what year this is supposed to, if it says what year this book takes place. Okay, so I don't know. I guess it will be the 1870s, because it can't be the 1970s. The 1870s. So when it was considered inappropriate then for wardrobe was not necessarily what's considered inappropriate today for wardrobe. And she also is trying to ask for a divorce from her husband. And we don't know anything about the husband. All we know is that, she wants a divorce from him. We don't know if maybe he was abusive or they fought a lot, or we don't know any of that. We don't get that context. It's basically Archer's story in this. And he is immediately enchanted with her and finds her fascinating and wants to see her get her independence because she strives to be an independent woman. And of course, in the 1870s, like I said, I'm guessing, it says the first sentence in chapter 1 says, on a January evening of the early 70s. So, like I said, 1870s. And he wants to see her get her independence, and of course, back then it wasn't like you should stay married to your husband, and a woman wanting independence, how dare she? And he starts to fall in love with her, but he does not want to abandon May because she's a sweet girl, and he does care about her. So it's a bit of a love triangle. So he's basically decided between doing his duty and marrying May, who nothing is wrong with, she's a perfectly respectable girl, or marrying, or giving into, or surrendering to his desire and his love for Ellen, who also loves him in return. It's just this beautiful, tragic love triangle that is just beautifully written. And both characters are fascinating, although Newland He frustrated me, got on my nerves. I feel like he was stringing both women along. He was too much of a coward to say. He should have said something, but of course I've never been in a love triangle, so I don't know how hard that is. And I feel like a lot of times the love triangles are a lot more passive, and they're still very passionate, but they're a lot more passive in like the literature of older literature. And I guess because back then it's almost like they were corseted in, like they were trapped in their in their restrictions of society. While like in today's society, women can get away with acting like hoes, and there can be some cat fights, like physical fights, and people have no problem with, acting out their passions in a very aggressive way. And it wasn't, people were more open with expressing their feelings, while here, like I said, I feel like they were corseted in. They couldn't express their feelings as strongly, and you wouldn't catch someone I feel like you wouldn't catch someone in this time period embarrassing someone and, publicly expressing their love for someone, and, whether what's embarrassing or not, in front of people. Not in, like, a class, because it wouldn't be acceptable by society. I feel so bad for both Ellen and May, because I feel like Newland kind of puts them both on this pedestal, and they both want things to be the way they want them to be. They're not, but they don't try to mess things up. They don't try to sabotage things. Ellen just wants to be free and wants to live her life the way she wants to live it. And she develops these romantic feelings for this guy who's engaged to her cousin, but she doesn't want to hurt her cousin. And then you have May, who wants the happy home life. She wants the the perfectly good life, and she's perfectly content with staying at home and doing her wifely duty, and she wants the family, and like, so neither one. I mean, so it's just so heartbreaking for both women, I feel like. But it's such a beautifully written story. I love this edition, by the way. This robbery, but with the quotes, and the raised letters, and this. I love this, and they're called Word Classics. It's a bit of a alliteration there. Word Cloud Classics Edition. Says, in reality, they all lived in a kind of hieroglyphic world where the real thing was never said or done, or even thought, but only represented by said arbitrary signs. We can't be. I like this quote too. We can't behave like people in novels, though, can we? And I think that's by Archer. Untrained human nature was not frank and innocent. It was full of twists and defenses of instinctive guile. There had never been a breath on her reputation. Each time you happened to meet all over again. It's confoundedly dull, anyhow. New York is dying of dullness. People cling to any convention that keeps the family together. If we don't all stand together, there will be no such thing as society left. It seems to have discovered America only to make it into a copy of another country. Those are some quotes from the book that I really like. I mean that are on here. Okay, so after Age of Innocence, I read. Oh wait, actually, I brought down. Oh crap. Okay, so I accidentally brought down this one, Exiled Queen, and I just realized I don't think I read that this month. I read that back in April, I think, so it doesn't technically count. So it is in the what's it called? I can't think of what it's called. Where you try to show the image. I can't remember. The thing I keep trying to learn how to show, and it never works. That thing, I can't remember what it's called, but I realized this should not be in there. It would not be in there because I think I read it in April. Okay, so, well, anyway. Okay, so next I read, alright, I need to look at the document. Let me go on Goodreads. My books. No, stop! Let me minimize this. I'll be back, guys. Reading challenge. So slow. Okay, there it goes. Okay, next I read. Okay. Okay, after that I read. A Curse So Dark and Lonely, and I don't care what other people say. I will take all the Beauty and the Beast retellings I can get. Although I get why people complain about, because it seems like a lot of authors write Beauty and the Beast retellings. There's always one coming out every year, it feels like. So I get it. It's overdone. But I still love it. I'll keep reading them. But I wouldn't mind seeing but again, I would like to see other ones as well. I know that I would love to see more. I'm always keeping an eye out for Rumpelstiltskin retellings. I know there is one in a series that starts with the Snow White and the Queen. It's that, and then there's in that series is also a Prince and the Pauper story. And I believe there's in the middle between those two is the Rumpelstiltskin retelling. And it's kind of like, I haven't read it, but I think it's supposed to be kind of like Lunar Chronicles in the way it's set up. I don't know though, I haven't read it, but I just vaguely recall a series like that. But what I would love to see is a Rumpelstiltskin retelling that is like the Once Upon a Time Rumpelstiltskin retelling that they set up. Rumpelstiltskin's origin story that they set up in Once Upon a Time in season 1. Like, I had my issues with that show, and I stopped watching after season 3. But I did like what they set up in season 1 when Rumpelstiltskin, where he was just a normal guy, a man with, he was married, war had happened, he realized, and when he tries to come, he finds out his wife is pregnant by a seer, so he tries to go home, but he realizes the only way he can go home is either broken bones or going home in a pine box. So he breaks his leg, goes home, and of course his wife is all pissed off because she wanted to die. She wanted to be an honored widow. I wanted to slap that bitch. But she has a little boy, and then years later when the boy is like a teenager, they have, the Duke of where they live has lowered the age for recruitment to 13, and knowing how war is and how you could die really easily in war, he doesn't want his 13-year-old son to go to war, so he tries to get him away, but then he's caught by the Duke's guards and bullied and stuff, and shamed by the guards because his wife, his son's mom, left him. And then, he meets this beggar and tells him that the Duke controls the Dark One, and the only is this evil sorcerer monster entity thing, and that the way to control him is through his magical dagger. So either you steal the dagger and control the Dark One, or you kill the Dark One and become the Dark One yourself. And I do not blame him for not being able to kill this guy, because that guy was scary, and he was manipulating him, and he was provoking him, and so I don't think that was cowardly. I think it made sense. It was not cowardly to me. To me, it was I think any idiot would be scared to face that monster. So it's it really pissed me off that he was made into considered a coward because of that. So he ends up killing the Dark One, provokes him, and he ends up killing him, and he becomes the Dark One. And then eventually, this kind of links to Beauty and the Beast, because he becomes the Beast. Unfortunately, that relationship went all over the place, and I don't think the writers knew what to do with his character, and he was not their favorite anymore. He was not their favorite toy anymore. So, that just fell apart. But what they established in the first season was really interesting, and that's what I want to see with the Rumpelstiltskin retelling. Like a story where maybe Rumpel was a man once, and okay, going to ignore that, and we'll respond to her later. But he was a normal guy, and he had a son that he was trying to protect. And then he's capable of love, falling in love and stuff. And that's what I want for Rumpelstiltskin retelling. I know there's one coming out soon. I don't know when it's going to come out, because, of course, with the whole world crisis and everything, it might be delayed. And maybe it won't come out until next year. But I am looking forward to it, and I hope that it's what I'm looking for. But I don't know. And if it is what I'm looking for, then maybe I will tell Terry about it. I try not to recommend things too much to her, because I get annoying when she keeps telling me, oh, you should check out this series. I wish you would check out this series, or this book. But anyway, and I think I know her taste. Sometimes I wonder if I know her taste better than she knows mine. But anyway, so this is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, where our beauty character is a 21st century girl. Their dad abandoned them when they were young, and so Harper, and I think she's either 16 or 18, because I think she's a teenager in the story. It's just her and her brother who basically is dealing with the aftermath of their father's abandonment. And he has Harper be the lookout for him while he's meeting with these people, because, she has cerebral palsy, and she's his little sister. So he figures the only thing that would be the safest thing job for her to do is keep a lookout. And their mom has cancer, and so during one of her brother's mysterious meetings where she's keeping an eye out for things, make sure no one gets in the way, she witnesses a drunk girl getting kidnapped. And so, because she is a good person, a good, caring person, she decides to help and rescue this girl. But what ends up... I'm going to ignore that because apparently my phone has to let me know twice. Don't forget you have a message. But, so she agrees to help. So she decides to help this girl, but what ends up happening is, yeah, she saves the girl, but she ends up getting kidnapped herself and going through a portal into a fantasy world. And the guy that was kidnapping her, his name is Gray, and it turns out that he is a soldier for Prince Ren of this kingdom, which is the name, which I do not remember the name of the kingdom, and I don't feel like looking it up. And of course, obviously, Ren is our beast character, but what is different about this one is that he's not a beast all the time. He is only a beast at the end of every season. He has to, and when I say every season, I mean the same season ever since he's been alive. He basically is cursed by Enchantress to repeat the season of his 18th year, and if he doesn't get a girl to fall in love with him, he will become a beast and will slaughter everybody. And unfortunately, he getting tired of this and tired of the torture that the Enchantress Lilith is putting on him, he finally is, she finally grants him that this is his last season. So everything is on the line here for him. And Harper, of course, she is very feisty and hot-tempered and does not like the idea of being kidnapped, too. You can't blame her. And she tries to escape several times, just like Belle did in the original animated movie. And the Prince Ren is just arrogant, selfish, and she does not like him. She hates him. But she does form a friendship with Gray. And finally, Gray is able to convince him to try to actually talk to her, not talk at her, and listen to what she has to say. And because both of them, the stakes are pretty high for both of them. So if they would just try to talk to each other and listen to each other, then maybe they would be more sympathetic and could become at least friends, if anything. And he ends up telling her about the curse, and she admits that she will probably never fall in love with him. But she will do what she can to be his friend and help him. And while there, what ends up happening is she actually falls in love with his kingdom. She sees, because his kingdom has been neglected, he's been feeling sorry for himself, and his family is dead, and another kingdom wants to invade his kingdom, and this queen wants to take over. And finally, Ren realizes that with encouragement from Harper, that he needs to, since this is his last year and he might not be able to get Harper to fall in love with him, he can at least do something about saving his kingdom. And making sure it doesn't end up in the wrong hands. I personally love this retelling of the story. Like I said, I'll take any Beauty and the Beast retelling because I still love them. I have not gotten tired of them. I mean, I do agree we need more different kinds of retellings, but I will never get tired of Beauty and the Beast retellings. What I really like about this one is that Harper is from our world, and it's a portal fantasy, so the fact that it's a portal fantasy does help to develop the world and explain the world, because she doesn't know anything about the world that Prince Ren and Gray come from. So it's an easy way to kind of explain the world to us and give us a world building, because she's so foreign to this world. And I love that she's from DC, because as a person who lived in Maryland, which was 45 minutes out of Washington, D.C., I thought that was really cool that she's someone from my neck of the woods, kind of. Although we didn't spend a lot of time in D.C. And so I thought that was kind of cool. I also think it's kind of cool that our main character Harper has cerebral palsy. Now, I don't know much about it. I do know two people who I believe have cerebral palsy. And one of them, her condition is similar to Harper's, if I remember correctly. It has been a long time because I knew her in middle school, so I don't know what's going on with her now. I don't even know and I do think one of my friends from back in the day is still friends with her. So, but I don't know what's going on with her life, but I think that's what she had, because she kind of had the same disabilities that Harper has. But I do not, but don't take my word on the representation. I mean, I thought it would, because I don't know anything about it. So I would check into that if that's important to you, that they get very accurate representation, whether you have the same disabilities or not. I also like that Harper was someone who was very determined to do things on her own. As someone who has my own disabilities, my own physical, now mine aren't as severe as hers. In fact, if you didn't know any better, you wouldn't be able to tell that I had disabilities. And I've always been the type of person who wants to, I have both learning disabilities and I have little subtle physical disabilities, as in my fine and gross motor and dexterity is very difficult to the point where I cannot drive, I can't ride a bike, I never learned to ride a bike. There's certain things that I struggle with doing. In fact, I don't even hold the pencil the way you're quote unquote supposed to hold a pencil. And I didn't crawl or walk the age that most kids normally do develop those skills. I was a very slow developer. So I appreciate that Harper was someone who was determined to do things on her own and to prove herself, because that's how I was. I was determined. I mean, I was not in a situation that Harper was in, thankfully, but I was someone who was determined to do things like for instance, math was a big challenge for me to learn, and my math teachers would be like, "Oh, you only have to do half the problems," but I was determined to do everything, because I wanted to prove that I could do it, even though I got really frustrated to the point where my parents and I would be fighting constantly while working on my math homework. And I'm always someone who wants to do things on their own, and I admit that I have that mentality of doing things my way. Not the whole it's my way or the highway, but doing things the way I want to do it. I want to figure it out on my own. And I appreciate that Harper was very much like that. Harper was someone who wants to do things on her own, wanted to prove herself. Especially because her brother treated her like she was still a kid. And he wouldn't always make her be the lookout because he didn't think she was capable of being, fighting back. Or being able to go in there and just, stand there, that she had to stay outside and be the lookout, and her brother kind of annoyed me in that way, but at the same time, it was like, I understand, because he cares about her, and he doesn't understand her disabilities, and he just is like, I have to protect her, I have to cradle her, and, make sure she's safe, and, it comes from a place of love, but it's also very frustrating, but I do really like it that she is so determined to prove herself and do things on her own. I know a lot of people prefer Gray because his personality is more interesting, because he's that tough, scary guy, Scary Gray that she calls him. But he's also has a heart of gold, and he also tries to listen to Harper and talk to her. He doesn't talk at her. He respects her and treats her like an equal, and they bond right away, which actually there is a bit of a hint of a love triangle. And it was actually a bit of a story that goes that, because I watched Elliot Brooks' review on this book, and she said, "Oh, I feel like there's not much of a love triangle," so I took her word for it. But then on Byzance, people were saying during the currently read, "Oh, I can sense there's a love triangle gonna happen." I got so panicky. Not in a panic, not freaking out, oh my god, a love triangle. Just more like, I don't want a love triangle. Why does it have to be a love triangle? Because yes, I'm more tolerant of love triangles than most people, but at the same time, I don't necessarily always want there to be a love triangle, but I'm not going to stop reading a book if there is one. But I was like, why does there have to be a love triangle? But then everything turned out okay in the end. But that's all I'm going to say. But I know, so I get why people did not like Prince Rem, but I automatically love those characters because, especially if they grow and learn. If they never grow and learn, then I'm never gonna love them. But the characters, if I know that they have potential to grow and learn, and this is the Beauty and the Beast retelling, so Prince Ren is obviously the Beast character, so it's he's gonna grow and learn, and so I'm like, why do you like Gray? He's not the Beast. Ren is supposed to be the Beast. I mean, Bridget Cameraere could have surprised us and made Gray the Beast too. But I also know that he is going to be the main character in the second book. So, he's obviously, But so that's kind of a spoiler. But I also like how this wasn't just about him wooing Harper. It was also about her helping him with his kingdom. Like there was political intrigue in the story. Like the kingdom was in trouble, and he realized I can't just sit here and feeling sorry for myself, and because my curse might not be broken, the only thing I can do is help my kingdom and save it and protect it from other people. And Harper helps out, so we get more than just them having dinner together or dancing or something. We also get them like interacting with people and helping and trying to help the people. And there's some interesting things in here, like how she just wants to give everybody, she wants to give this one family some food and stuff because they're poor. And then Prince Ren points out to her, well, if other people see you doing this, they'll be like, they'll want more food, and we will never have enough. And Harper, it's like, it doesn't matter, we should still help these people, at least help who we can. And Prince Ren wants to be able to help everybody, and he knows he can't do that. If he just gives one family food, he won't have enough to give to everybody. So it's very interesting to look at the Ren struggle and how, like, he wants to help everybody, but part of him feels like, but then he also feels like he can't help everybody because, and it's like a struggle for him because he wants to be a good king. At the end of the day, he still wants to be a good leader, but he knows his limitations. And Harper, being from another world, does not understand that, and being someone who not exactly a somewhat more sheltered life than most people, except for the fact that they're, it's not entirely sheltered, but she has a decent life compared to some people. I also like, I hate her, but I also love her, the Enchantress Lilith. Oh my god, she makes such a great antagonist. She's such a witch, but she's also, like, she's so seductive. She reminds me a little bit of Cersei Lannister, if Cersei had magical powers. She's so manipulative and such a little hoe, but, and she's so, it's evil, and it just, I love it. It works. Like, I feel like, because, I always associate the Enchantress as being like a fae, and fae are tricksters. The only difference between the Seelie and the Unseelie is the Seelie is actually somewhat nice. It won't necessarily kill you. They might, while the Unseelie doesn't give a rat's ass about humans, but the Seelie, not that they care, but they'd be a little bit nicer about it. And I always associated the Enchantress as like a fae. And the torture she comes up with are so, like, oh my god, like, I think she just makes it such a great antagonist. Although I'm kind of interested in, I feel like the queen that's trying to take over Ren's kingdom, I think she's going to be the antagonist. I'm guessing she's going to be the antagonist in the next one. So I'm kind of interested how that's going to go. Like, how is she going to be compared to Lilith? I'm kind of curious though, what if Heart So Fierce and Broken, is that considered a retelling of another story? But I don't know. But I'm looking forward to reading that one. I almost wish I had bought that one the other day when I finally got to go to I finally got to go to BAM, because everything is slowly opening up, and as long as it's not someplace where you sit down and chit chat and stuff and just hang out, it's okay. They allowed it to be open, and I mean, of course, you still should wear like your mask and stuff like that. And I also brought gloves because I forgot my sanitizer, so I brought my gloves too when we went. Actually, I'll show you guys those books after I do this wrap up. Okay, so I'm gonna put this book down because I'm done talking about it. Okay, so next book I read this one actually in 2 days, and that is Finale, the final book in the Caraval trilogy. And okay, so this is gonna be spoilerly, because I can't talk about this without telling you guys about Caraval in Legendary. I just can't. So I'm just gonna warn you, and I'm just gonna have spoilers. But this is a story about this trilogy altogether. It's about two sisters, Scarlet and Donatella. Their mom left them when they were really young, so they live on an island with their dad, who is an abusive jerk. To the point where he will essentially, like, if one of them does something wrong, the other one will get punished for the thing that the other one did wrong. So he's a manipulative bastard. And, all their lives, these girls always dreamed about going to Caraval, which is like a traveling carnival circus thing that, it's very magical and whimsical, and it's like a game that you play, like a bit of a scavenger hunt kind of thing. And since they were little girls, they always wanted to participate in it, and they will constantly write to Legend, who is the mysterious immortal host of Caraval, but he never responds to them. So, as they get older, Scarlet, the older sister, has stopped believing in Caraval, no longer believes and thinks it's childish, and she grows up and becomes a very cautious young woman. And one day, their father has arranged for her to marry this guy, this lord from another country, another part of the country that they live in. And she's all excited, she's writing letters to him, and she sees this as a chance to escape. While Donatella, her younger sister, does not agree. She thinks that if a guy was chosen by their father, he's not a good option, and she decides to try one last time to write to Legend. Now, Scarlet is the more adventurous sister. She's the more passionate, more flirtatious sister. She's not as cautious. And she finally gets a response from Legend, and he invites them to Caraval, as they have always wanted. And when she runs into this young sailor named Julian, she asks him to help her escort her sister to Caraval. So they manipulate and kind of kidnap Scarlet and lead her and take her to Caraval. But when they get there, disaster strikes because Tella gets kidnapped. And basically, her and Julian, who she does not trust, have to team up to find her sister, and that will win them the game, it turns out, because Scarlet and Tella ends up being the thing that you have to find by the end of the game. And that was first of all, I love the atmosphere of Caraval. It's so imaginative and interesting and engaging, and just the idea of this scavenger hunt, this traveling magical carnival. And it's also very creepy too, because you're reminded throughout the story that you can't trust what you see, you can't rely on things, and it's also one of those things where you have to make deals with, you have to give something to get something in return mentality. And it's such a mysterious, in fact, I could see a retelling of this with Once Upon a Time. I think about it, if I ever did a retelling, I would like a fan fiction that was inspired by Caraval. I think that would be really interesting if I ever did that. But I haven't read fan fiction in a long time, so every time I think about doing it, then I end up forgetting about it and be like, oh, I don't feel like doing that. But I could really do an interesting fan fiction where, like, maybe I would make Rumple Legend, and I don't know who his other, I don't know who the other, because, I would have to think for a second. I would have to figure out who would be like Julian and all that, but, and what I would probably do is, I would probably have to let people know that this is a fan fiction with inspiration from Caraval, the book series Caraval by Stephanie Garber. But that'd be really interesting. Like, Rumple could really work for the character of Legend. But, anyway. So, the first book is from Scarlet's point of view, which I know a lot of people do not like Scarlet, but I love Scarlet, and I think it's partly because I feel like I relate to Scarlet in a lot of ways. Like, at least her personality, anyway. Sometimes I wonder, though, if I'm more Tella than Scarlet. But I don't know. I will never know until I get in a situation like this, which hopefully will never happen. I mean, although I do wish magic were real, the kind of, or at least the kind of magic that is in fantasy. But anyway, and then the second one is Legendary, which is from Tella's perspective, where this time it's Tella playing the game, and while Scarlet is kind of dealing with her feelings that she develops for Julian. And in that one, Tella is kind of caught in a bit of a love triangle because she has these two guys that are interested in her. This one guy named Jax, and then this guy who she's partnering with to play the game named Dante, this mysterious guy that she doesn't know anything about. But there's a bit of a twist with Dante's character at the end of the second book. And this final book, we have new bad guys. Like, it seems like Legend in the first and the second book is kind of the antagonist, but in this one, the antagonists are the Fates. These mysterious entities, immortal beings that were found in these cards, which they're kind of like tarot cards, or at least from what I know about tarot cards. I don't know a lot about those, but the impression I get from tarot cards is they are kind of like that. And they get released by the end of the second book. And so the sisters have to work together with Legend and Julian to defeat the Fates. And they are very creepy and very powerful. They're slowly getting power. And one of the ones that I think is the scariest and makes the best antagonist. Actually, well, technically we have two antagonists in this book. But that's the Prince of Hearts, because he can actually manipulate your emotions. Which is kind of scary, because he can make you think you love him and not even realize that you hate him and you're absolutely terrified of him. And that's what I call Stockholm Syndrome. But, so those guys, like, Jax is so scary. I think he's an awesome antagonist because of his power and how scary he is and how seductive he is. And there are brief glimmers, because, like, you find out in this one that the Immortals / Fates, they don't feel anything. They're only, if they feel anything for a human, it ends up resulting in lust, obsession, and maybe passion, but it's not real love. It's not true love. And then if you are able to make it true love, get a Fate to fall in love with you, then the Fate will become human. And that's, of course, the last thing that any of the Fates want is to become human, because they're more powerful as immortals and they won't die. So now this one is supposed to be from both perspectives, but it does get a little more into Tella's perspective, which I kind of wish, like, I love Tella's perspective, but another reviewer had said that they wish that there was more Scarlet's perspective, and I kind of agree. I wish we had equal amounts of Scarlet and Tella's perspective, because Scarlet's story was very interesting and very intriguing, like, especially with what she finds out about her heritage and her backstory, where she really comes from. Like, I think that makes it even more interesting, and I would love to see her perspective on the situation. I also would love to get more. Another thing I would have loved is, I don't know what Stephenie Meyer is going to do next, but I would love to get background on the Fates in Legend and Julian. I think that would be so interesting if we got their backstory. We got how Caraval came to be, and I think the Fates at one time were mortals, were humans at one time, so it'd be interesting and the book kind of implies that there is a history of them. And I would love to kind of get that backstory, even if it's like a kind of like how, Cassandra Clare wrote the Shadowhunter Codex, or like how, J.K. Rowling wrote all those textbooks, in the Book of Fairy Tales, where we kind of, where George R. R. Martin, and I have the book somewhere, he wrote a, Fire and Blood, which is kind of like the history of the Targaryens. So it's kind of like a textbook. I would love if Stephenie Meyer would do, or the Book of Fairy Tales, or like how Leigh Bardugo, and both Leigh Bardugo and what's his name, who wrote the Kill Your Children series, whose name escapes me at the moment, how they both kind of wrote a collection of fairy tales from the worlds that they created. I would love that too. Kind of like how J.K. Rowling did the same thing with the whole Tales of Beedle and Bard. Just to kind of get the history of the Fates and how they came to be, especially with what we learned about Legend and Julian in this. And okay, so I'm gonna get a minor spoiler here. So, Legend and Julian, we find out, are brothers in this towards the end of the second book. I think it was the second book, or it might have been the first, at the end of the first book, I cannot remember. We find out that they are brothers. Actually, it might have been the first book when we find that out. So I would love to, and so looking at their relationship versus juxtaposed to the relationship between Tella and Scarlet is very interesting, because Tella and Scarlet are completely opposites of each other, but they love each other more than anything, will do anything for each other, and really care about each other, especially after all the shit that they go through. You know, with their father, with their mom abandoning them, and then all that they go through in Caraval, and how they will do anything for each other. They really care about each other. And they are so devoted. And while you have these two brothers, Julian is loyal and loves his brother, and and of course he knows that he can't leave his brother because he's kind of bound to Caraval. And even though he's not immortal, like Legend, if he goes out into the real world, he will die. So he kind of is and kind of isn't. I think Caraval keeps him and the rest of the Caraval people young, but if they go into the real world, they'll age and die. I think that's how it works. And he's completely devoted to his brother. He's loyal, not just because of that, and he really cares about his brother. While Legend doesn't feel anything for his brother. He's focused on his immortality and running Caraval. That's all he cares about. So it's very interesting to see comparing the two relationships, the two sibling relationships, and seeing them side by side and looking at the parallels between them. This was so much happened in this finale, and which finale? Perfect. I actually read this for the first two books I talked about, and then this one were all read for the medieval readathon that is going and will end in a couple days, actually. But it was just so good, and I just love Caraval. I almost want to go there, just without all the drama, without all the problems and the risk of my life. And like I said, I feel like I could do like a Once Upon a Time fan fiction based on this trilogy. I think it'd be very interesting because I could see Rumple being like Legend in a way. But it's just like, this atmosphere is so cool. I love the idea of this magical carnival where nothing is what it seems. And it's just, and how basically everything comes with a price, and just this whole world that is created within Caraval is just so interesting. And then the whole fates concept is so creepy, but like the individual fates are really creepy, but it's also so interesting. Like, I always found that kind of story so engaging and fascinating, and just so much fun to explore in a work of fiction. And I don't know if I want to be part of it in real life. I mean, part of me morbidly is curious. Another part is like, yeah, I would probably regret that. But, so, sorry, a friend of mine who I wrote a few days ago has finally responded to my comment. But anyway. So actually, that was pretty good. That was good compared to, when I was... Okay, I'll respond to after I finish filming. I'm trying not to get distracted by that, but it's really loud. So I did a pretty good job, but I feel like I didn't spoil too much. Like, I was very worried because I always, practice what I'm going to say in these videos before I film them. Okay, so what I read next after that one is... I think I read Warbreaker next. Or that's the one I finished. Warbreaker, I finally got to Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. So I decided that before I got back to Way of Kings, I wanted to read his 2 standalone books, which although they might become serious, which I really hope is the case, because I would think with how this one ended, I think it would be very interesting to see what happens next for our main characters. But we have these two sisters, again, reading about sisters, which I really like, Ciri and Vivenna, and they are in a kingdom that was usurped and cast aside by this other kingdom that is ruled by gods. That basically, when they die, they come back to life looking really good and really like, it's kind of like the whole vampire thing where you become a vampire all of a sudden you become super strong and super fast and really good looking. That's what happens with these guys, and they can steal the life force from people using breath. And that is the magic system in this world, that people can use their breath to bring objects to life and create color in their world. And of course, for the people in the kingdom that these girls come from, color is just seen as nothing but garish and gaudy, and they don't like it. Which I think is a really awesome magic system. I was most excited to get to this one. So, and the way I think is that the thing I'm most excited about, I save that for last. And that's how I am with eating food. The food that I'm most excited, I most enjoy eating, I save that one for last. Except for I always eat the what is considered the main course. I always eat that first. So even if that's my favorite aspect of the meal, I will still eat that one first. But their father made a deal with the people of this kingdom, and it was like, to protect my child and to make sure we don't go to war with each other, I will send my oldest daughter to marry your god king. But when that time comes, he changes his mind at the last minute and sends Ciri, his younger daughter, who is very free-spirited. She doesn't know anything about this kingdom, was not prepared for it like her older sister was. And she's constantly breaking the rules, not following her father's rules and stuff. And she's very rebellious. Which I have a theory of why their father changed their mind. And if Brandon Sanderson does write a sequel to this, I wonder if he's going to explore that more, because I think I have an idea why their father changed their mind, which they do think, but Vivenna does kind of think about that. But I don't remember if she officially said that she has got an idea why he changed his mind and sent Ciri instead. Because I think it's more than just Ciri's that Vivenna is the favorite and he wants to protect his favorite child. I think it's more than that. But maybe it's not. I don't know. But anyway, so Ciri gets sent to marry the God King, and she is so unprepared for this. And when she gets there, she is told that she must get the God King to impregnate her so they can have an heir. But when she gets there, she's told by one of the advisors, Bluefingers, and one of the scribes, that she's discreetly told that you don't want to get him pregnant. I mean, you don't want him to get you pregnant, and things are not what they seem. So when she meets the God King, he barely interacts with her. He just lurks in the corner, doesn't say anything to her. She doesn't interact with him, so she's forced to sit there naked and waiting for him to, decide he wants her sexually. And to the point where eventually she realizes that the priest cannot see her, but they can hear her, so eventually she decides to, in a very amusing scene, some amusing moments, make the sex noises so it sounds like they're having sex, like the screaming and the moving around on the bed and the being like the moaning and all that stuff that comes from when you are doing that, and which I find really funny that and the God King is just looking at her like, what the heck are you doing? Because and meanwhile, Vivenna decides to, because she feels like she needs to save her sister, and also she doesn't understand why she feels like she's unimportant now, decides to go and save her sister and travel to the kingdom where her sister is. And she ends up getting the spy her father had, that was keeping, an eye on and reporting to him, he ends up dying right away in the beginning of the story. So she ends up taking the mercenaries that worked for her father's spy, say that now we're your spies. And on top of that, the spy ends up giving her his breath. And so she has all this breath inside of her, but of course she doesn't want it, because in their little kingdom, it's like disgusting, and it's like, I don't want to steal life force from people, which you can't entirely blame them. And she must team up with these mercenaries, and they decide that they need to make trouble in the kingdom to save her sister and protect her from and save their own kingdom. And there's one last character that's introduced, which is a god, one of the gods, Lightsong, who I just love Lightsong. I definitely get now why everybody loves Lightsong. He's funny, he's charming. He's also that kind of character that just, he doesn't get why people worship him. He's like, I'm not a god, I've just got lucky. You know, he doesn't want anything to do with it, and he's just really like there's at one point where there's this game that all the gods play, and he, for some, even though he doesn't know anything about the game or how to play it, he somehow wins every time, which I don't know if they're letting him win, or if he's just so good that he doesn't even realize it. Like, maybe it's a game from his other life. Because the gods are basically people who died and come back to life, but they don't remember their previous life. He also forms an interesting relationship with one of the goddesses, Blushweather, who wants to do something because she suspects that war is coming and that they need to choose. And she's like, you know, Lightsong, you need to choose a side, and Lightsong is trying to remain neutral. He kind of reminds me of, he kind of reminds me of if Geralt from The Witcher was a little more lighthearted and not as, like, broody. He kind of like that whole snarky, like, sassy, I want to be neutral, I don't want to get in the middle of this attitude. I feel like that is very, like, I feel like Lightsong and Geralt are similar in that way anyway. But this was a really, first off, like I said, I was really excited about the magic system in this world. The idea of your breath, using breaths and colors, and the idea of breathing on something that you can make it come to life and it will all of a sudden become really bright and colorful. I thought that is such a cool concept. I also love the characters, all the characters, the good guys and the bad guys. I think, on the one hand, I think it's kind of funny, but also I can see where it would get annoying. The whole fact that the mercenaries that she's working for, Tonkfa, and I can't remember the other guy's name, that they keep telling Vivenna, they're like, you know, the best thing about mercenaries, or you can't trust mercenaries, or, you know, people always assume mercenaries are this way, but they're really this way. And I could just picture her just rolling her eyes and like, okay, tell me more about mercenaries, why don't you? So, yeah, I think it's funny, but it can get incredibly annoying that they keep saying the best thing about mercenaries are. But I do like those guys. They're really funny. And I also, you know, one of the things that Brandon Sanderson does really well is that he introduces characters not only of great development, but also that they seem one way in the story, but then later on you realize, oh wait, they're actually this way. Like, I love that twist of the idea of a character starting out, like, you think they're something, but then you find out later that they're not that thing, that they're something else. I find that so interesting. I think Brandon Sanderson does that really well. And it's just, the story is so cool. I like that it's the center of the story is these two sisters, and how, you know, and also I like how I really want to read, I want to continue to read more stories about sisters, and I'm not talking like Little Women necessarily type stories. I'm talking like stories like this, or like the Caraval trilogy, where, you know, because it feels like, just like with friendships, siblings, the sibling plot kind of gets shoved aside. Like, it's just part of the main character's life. They have a sibling who's like really annoying or something, and I feel like in that the more important relationship is the romance, and I love romance. I love romance in my fantasy. Like, I will defend that how YA authors are constantly including a romance. Like, I know a lot of people criticize that and are like, oh, we're tired of there being a romance all the time. Like, I like story, I'm into the whole idea of stories that have, an actual, like, I like the idea of the romance, but I do want more stories with not just friendships at the center, but also siblings at the center of the story. Like, they're not just the annoying brother or sister that the main protagonist must protect. I want them to play a role in the story, like, not just someone that the main character needs to protect. So this was kind of cool that it was about these two sisters and their roles together in this whole situation. I think that's one of the reasons why I like Frozen better than Tangled. I love Tangled, but I kind of prefer Frozen a little bit more because at the center of the story, the core of the story is the relationship between these two sisters and the bond that they share. Okay, so after that one, the book I finished was The Barchester Towers, which is the second one in the Barsetshire series by Anthony Trollope. This is my second Trollope read, and I really loved it. And this is another one that, because it's a series, I don't know if, again, the weather's doing that thing where it's like really sunny out, but it's raining at the same time, or at least it sounds like it's raining. It might just be because I have a, the way my house is set up, where my room is, the rain will come down, so it's sometimes, I think it's raining, then I go out and I realize, oh wait, it's not actually raining. And it just sounds like it because the way the water is going off the roof. But anyway, so I don't know how well I'm going to do with this one because this is the second one. I might just end up spoiling the first book. The first book is essentially about, the whole series overall is about the church in this town called Barchester, in a small English village, and it's all about this village and their church and how much they care about their church and everything and how important it is in the politics of their church. And the first one is a plot where the warden of the hospital, which of course is connected to the church, he is getting a pretty decent salary. It's him and his daughter. His other daughter is married to Dr. Grantley, who is the Archbishop's son, and he ends up losing, and what is happening is that his other daughter, Eleanor, her fiance, finds out that his salary is a lot of money. He's getting a pretty decent salary, a pretty nice salary, and he feels like some of that money from the hospital should go to the poor people, to charity. So, and her brother-in-law, Dr. Grantley, Eleanor's brother-in-law, Dr. Grantley, he doesn't like John Bold, and he decides to interfere and exasperate the situation, make things worse. So in the second one, this is here's a little bit of spoiler, that John Bold and Eleanor do get married, but he passes away. And so it's just Eleanor and they have a little boy named Johnny, and he left her with quite a bit of money. She has quite financial security, so she's good there. And Dr. Grantley's father, the Archbishop, has passed away. We're talking about the second book now. The Archbishop has passed away, and Dr. Grantley, being the son of the Archbishop, is like assuming it only makes sense that I would get the job. But he does not get the job, because these new people called the Proudies, Dr. Proudy, show up, and they get the job of he gets the job of the bishop, Dr. Proudy, and his wife is such a manipulative, ambitious woman. She's got him her husband wrapped around her little finger, and he also has the Mr. Slope, he makes the chaplain, and he also is very ambitious and manipulative, and he is partnered up with the wife, and so they manipulate things, and they don't want Eleanor's father, Septimus Harding, to get the job as the warden of the hospital again. They have someone else in mind, but they, out of courtesy, they approach him, and Slope talks to him and is like, is like, there's some stipulations. We can still give you back your job, but there's some stipulations to this job. Which Harding does not agree with necessarily. He does not approve of those stipulations. He doesn't think that they're a good idea. It's not his cup of tea. So they're all thinking, oh, now we can give this to the Quiverfuls, or the people that they want to actually have the wardenship of the hospital. And meanwhile, Slope has to win over the community, especially because he had gave this sermon that had very mixed opinions on the sermon. Not everybody, half the community did not like it, the other half loved the sermon. And he also wants to win over Eleanor and her sister-in-law. Now, it's kind of, at first it starts out as innocent, like him just charming her because she's part of the community, but then he finds out that she's pretty wealthy. She got a lot of money from her dead husband. And he decides, you know what, I'm gonna pursue this woman, get Eleanor to fall in love with me and want to marry me. And Grantley and her father did not like that. They do not want her to marry the enemy. And at one point, Grantley even threatens Eleanor with, well, if you marry this guy, then you're going to lose your family. But of course, her father is always going to be loyal to her. Harding loves his daughter more than anything, and will always be loyal to her no matter who she chooses to marry. But little do they realize that she does not want to marry Slope. She sees him as just a friend, and she feels bad for him because people automatically are hating on him. But then she starts to not like him herself eventually because he crosses the line at one point. A line that she's not comfortable with. But Eleanor also has two other suitors in the story. She also has Bertie Stanhope, whose sister has manipulated him into wooing Eleanor because he is in a lot of debt, and thinks if he marries Eleanor, then she will help him pay off his debts. So Charlotte makes friends with Eleanor. Little does Eleanor know what's really going on. And the last suitor is Mr. Arabin, who is a friend of Grantley's, and Grantley wants his help, wants him as an ally on their fight against the Proudies and Slope, and even gives him a position in the church order. I don't remember what they wanted to give him, what job they wanted to give him. And him and Eleanor kind of get along. They don't agree. They have a very interesting relationship. And then when he finds out that she might be marrying Slope, even though that's not true at all, he realizes his true feelings for Eleanor and falls in love with her. So this is just full of such a lot of drama. It feels like a soap opera a little bit. And so much, poor Eleanor, she gets a lot of crap from her brother-in-law. He was so arrogant, and Grant, I didn't like him in the first book, and I do not like him in the second book. He just is arrogant, assumes he knows everything, and of course Susan, who's his wife, even though Eleanor is her younger sister, she sides with him all the time and just automatically assumes that, oh my god, Eleanor's gonna marry Slope, she's betraying us, and it's like, I want to slap her and be like, oh my god, you do not know your sister at all. I mean, Grantley, I get it, but to an extent, but Susan, I would expect better from her, at least. Except Harding is a little. Sorry, my nose was itching. Which I know I shouldn't touch my face, but I've been home all day, so I haven't really interacted with anybody. I have not been around anybody getting any germs, so I'm pretty sure I'm good, and I've washed my hands since yesterday. So, and I love in Slope. Oh my god, he's so sleazy and just he's so good at being charming and winning people over. He's such a sleazebag, and I feel like him and Miss Proudy make good antagonists. And Miss Proudy, I just wanted to I hate her so much, but in a good way. And they make excellent antagonists, I feel like. And then Arabin is such so awkward and that male character that I just love. I just love those male characters that are just so awkward and don't know how to handle this when they fall in love for the first time and they don't know what to do and they're just struggling. They're trying to be gentlemen about it. He's trying so hard to be a gentleman, but at the same time he has these feelings and he's And of course, Eleanor is being very proud and being stubborn. Is like, she's mad at him because she thinks he was the one who convinced Grantley that she was marrying Slope. So even though she's developing her own feelings for him, she doesn't entirely trust him, and she's being all proud about it. It's like, I don't need to justify myself or give you an answer, because he basically asked her, "Are you going to marry Slope?" And this is so and what it is a lot similar to the writing style is very similar to Dickens, but something different that Trollope does that Dickens I don't think does as much is he talks to the reader. He and I feel like this is supposed to be a satire anyway, and sometimes I feel like the satire kind of goes over my head and I have to think about it for a minute if it's a satire, if it's supposed to be comical or not. I feel really dumb that I don't realize that. But we also get a very interesting the only problem that I have with how Trollope writes is that he kind of spoils the reader a little bit. Like, he always reassures the reader, everything's gonna be fine, these characters will be okay. Now, I don't know if he does that because it's supposed to be kind of a satire or not, but he's always telling you, it's like, everything's okay, the characters are gonna be fine, you don't need to worry about these characters. It's like, okay, yeah, you're not giving us the exact details of how it's gonna happen, but you're kind of spoiling for us and telling us, oh, we don't have to worry. Now, for some people I know that read, for instance, romance, and they want to know that their favorite couple is going to be happy and end up together, that could potentially be reassuring and comforting. Like, I have a friend who, basically it's Terry. She loves romance, and she likes to know, and I admit, I kind of cheat too, and let myself get spoiled for couples. But I think for anyone else, they might not want to be spoiled, so it is a bit risky that he kind of spoils a little bit by telling you, oh, by the way, everything's going to be fine for these characters. But it is kind of charming, though, the way he talks to the reader. It is charming. But anyway, this is a really good series so far. I can't wait to continue with it. I'm going to read Dr. Thorne. I want to read Dr. Thorne this summer. Okay, so the last two. Okay, this one comes first. The last books, this is my second finishing of a Stephen King collection, Full Dark, No Stars. This only is 4, so that helped. 4 novellas, although one of them I feel like is more a short story than a novella. But in this one, our monsters don't have supernatural powers. They don't have fangs or claws. They're actually humans. They're normal people that have, enact their selfish desires and given to sin in a way. And I don't say that as I'm trying to be religious or anything. I mean, as in, I feel like there's a heavy theme of the 7 deadly sins in the story. I mean, it doesn't say it, but I feel like they kind of, each of the characters, like the 7 deadly sins are, anger, lust, envy, gluttony, greed, sloth, and pride. And I feel like there is a heavy undercurrent theme of those in each of these stories. But okay, so like the first one, 1922, which is a Netflix movie, is about a farmer, his wife, and son, and the wife wants to sell the land and buy a store and move. And legally the land is hers because it's her grandfather's land. And she does not care about this land at all, but her husband, Wilfred, our narrator, does care about the land. And tries to persuade her not to do that, but she's determined to sell it, so he decides the only rational way to deal with it is kill her. And he persuades his son to help him by telling him that the son, who's like 14 going on 15, that your mom is going to ruin your life, take you away from your girlfriend who are just starting to, love and everything, and all your friends. And so Henry, the son, does not want that to happen, but he still loves his mom. I mean, the idea of killing his mom is a little bit like, he's not comfortable with it. And, so after a lot of back and forth, there's a scene where the husband gets his wife drunk. His wife, Arlette is her name, gets her drunk, And when she summons her son to come to them, she talks to him about his girlfriend and is very vulgar about it. And that finally is what seals the deal for Henry to help his father kill her. And it's about the aftermath of them doing that and how they deal with it and how it really affects them. It has a bit of a domino effect on them. It ruins their relationship. It drives him to seek comfort in his girlfriend, and they have sex before they're, without using protection, and she gets pregnant. And it's about the aftermath of that as well, and how her parents are not happy with that. They're pissed off about it, and they're like, his son needs to learn to keep it in his pants. And so it's a very interesting, and it's set, like I said, it's set in the 1920s, 1922, which I kept forgetting that. I kept forgetting that it was set in the 1920s because I kept thinking of them dressed like how a modern 21st century farmer would dress. But I don't know, maybe that's not that different. But, it's set in Nebraska. I don't know if I mentioned that, but it was very interesting, very dark, very edgy. And Stephen King, by the way, has a thing for rats. So there are rats in this story. It's kind of gross, and there is really no supernatural phenomenon in this, but there's a hint of supernatural because Wilfred's guilty conscience gets to him, and he starts seeing the ghost of his dead wife, that she seems to be haunting them. And like I said, there's the rats as well. And then, meanwhile, the second one is Big Driver, about this woman who's in her 30s, which, by the way, that made it even more disturbing that she's in her 30s because I'm 32 now, 31. I'm going to say 32. I meant 31. And my sister is in her mid to late 30s, and then my best friend is also in her late 30s, as in Terry. So maybe a little more nerve-wracking to find out that we're pretty close to the age that our main character Tessa is. And she is this novelist that's mildly popular, and she gets invited to this library event to talk about her stories, her novels, which are like the cozy mystery, like think Agatha Christie and Charlene Harris's mysteries. Like not the Suki Stackhouse ones, but her mysteries that she writes. And it goes well, but Ramona Norville, I think that's her name, that was her last name. Ramona Norville sends her on on a shortcut that will get her home faster. But when she takes it, something is on the road which busts her tire, and so her car breaks down, and she's forced to stop at a truck stop to fix her tire. And this big guy approaches her and offers to help her with her car, and fix her tire. And funnily enough, he does fix her tire. But what ends up happening is he's like, okay, how about instead of helping you, I screw ya instead, as in have sex with you. Which I'm sorry, I don't like saying the F word. I'm not comfortable with it. And even when I read a book, I'll say it in my head, but that's about it. And he ends up raping her and then leaving her for dead. And this is, he rapes her, and it's like very traumatic. It's like a lot trauma for her. And eventually she decides to take matters into her own hands because she feels like she can't go. She reasons her way out of going to the police and feels like the only option is to get revenge on this guy herself. And it turns into this really big thing, and a lot more people are involved than she realizes. And I think that is the most uncomfortable story to read. It's the hardest one to read. Now the last one I think is the darkest story, but this one was the most nerve-wracking, most uncomfortable story to read, especially because King does not shy away. He does not sugarcoat anything, and he is pretty, not bloody, gory, graphic about it, but he's, we're in the head of Tessa the whole time, so we get all of her feelings, and we kind of get a little bit of a description of him having sex with her, and it's just him raping her. I should say raping, because it's not really sex to me. It's something is a two-way thing, To me, this is rape. So the third story is the one that I think is more of a short story than a novella, and that is Fair Extension, where we have this average middle-aged guy. He has, a loving wife and 2 kids. He's a pretty decent life, not great. and he has cancer, so he's dying soon, and it makes him depressed and everything. So my butt cheeks are hurting. So years, so one day while he's driving around town, he meets this guy, this average, nice looking, normal looking guy, on the middle of the road, in the middle of the road, who will grant people extensions. And he doesn't understand what that means, but the guy is like, I give hair extensions, I give nail extensions, but I also give things like life extensions. And he offers a deal with our main character, whose name is David, I think. I think his name is David. Let's see. I'm looking. I want to say his name is David. Oh, now I'm in the other story, the last one. Okay, here it is. I'm trying to think of his name. Kelly. Where's it? So I'm looking for his name. His first name. Okay, they keep, there's his last name, but where's his first name? Okay, Streeter. His last name is Streeter. Where is his first name? I cannot remember. Why did they say, like, Elvid. That's, which, by the way, the guy who gives the extension's name is Elvid, spelled George Elvid, Elvid. You spell it backwards. What does that tell you? What does that spell? Yeah, okay, so it is Dave Streeter. And he's like, I can get rid of your cancer and give you a life extension, but you have to do something for me in return. You cannot just get this life extension for free. So he's like, pick someone that you hate, and they will suffer the consequences of you losing your cancer. And he picks his best friend, who he resents because he was always helping his best friend. His best friend is this good-looking, athletic young man. And this man and his best friend stole Dave's girlfriend, or at least that's how it looks in his eyes. Because we're getting Dave's perspective, so it could be an unreliable narrator. I feel like it's, or at least we're getting his perspective on the situation, so there's no guarantee that. But anyway, and he has the good life. He had a great business, like a dumpster business, working a dump, whatever a trash business that he does really successful. His wife is, he's still married to the girlfriend, to Dave's ex-girlfriend. They have kids, very loving kids, a son that will still kiss his father on the cheek when he leaves. He's good looking and athletic too, and he even dates one of the Dave's daughter, I believe. And so Dave, not taking this very seriously, so alright, fine, you go screw my friend and get rid of my cancer, and somehow it actually happens. And everything just falls apart for his best friend. Everything, his whole life falls apart. Like I said, I feel like that one was more of a short story than a novella. But it's the fastest read in this collection. Then we have the last one is called A Good Marriage, about husband and wife, pretty normal, pretty decent marriage. Their kids are all grown up. They've been together for 27 years, happily married. I mean, there's things about each other that annoy each other, but other than that, it's a pretty good life. Her husband is a collector of coins, of rare coins, and he's doing pretty well. He travels a lot. But then one day, when she is going into the garage, she finds a box of something that's a little bit disturbing and might imply that her husband is a murderer. and this kind of ruins their marriage. So that one, I just love that one. That was so good and so interesting. Very dark, and I think it's the darkest story because it's like this woman, Darcy, thought she knew her husband loved him, and they were together for 27 years, and to find out that he might be a murderer, and she is living with him, that's kind of scary, especially because he manipulates her and and doesn't see himself as doing anything wrong. He rationalizes his situation. So it's a very interesting examination of marriage and how you think you know someone, but then you find out something about them and you realize you don't know them at all. So it's a bit creepy and unsettling to me. Maybe creepy is not the right word, but very unsettling. You find out that you thought you know someone, and turned out that you don't know them at all. Especially if something like this, where he might be a murderer. So that's why I feel like it's the darkest story, because it's like the other stories, they kind of knew their victim. They knew the person. The characters knew each other. They knew their victims or the person that was punishing them. Doing this to them. They knew, or like they didn't have any. They didn't know them. There was no strong connection, or they felt justified even if they did know them. Well, in this one, she didn't. She thought she knew her husband, but she didn't. Although, I guess by the end of it, she feels there's a sense of justification. But anyway, I'm really glad I read this collection. I'm not going to keep it, because I feel like I probably would never read it again. I'll either donate it back to the roast office when we can finally go there, because that one has a cafe, so I'm guessing that they don't want to open that one yet. And either I'll donate to them, or there's the bookstore in the small little used bookstore in Aberdeen that I might give it to them as one in their Stephen King collection, because I know they do have Stephen King. I really hope they didn't fall apart. I hope they're still going to open up again, because they're a small business and they just started back in November of, I want to say 2019, that they had just started, or December 2019. So I kind of hope they don't give up on the store just because of what happened, because they're a small store. They just got started. But I might give it to them. I'm gonna probably, now that things are starting to open up, I think I'm gonna go through all my books. Maybe I should do that today. Because I don't know when everything's gonna completely open up. Who knows? Because with this virus, I don't know if they're gonna wait until someone finds a cure, or maybe they're gonna wait until people or I don't know. I don't know when everything's gonna open up, guys. But anyway, so yeah, like I said, I'm glad I read it. They were very interesting stories, and I like that. And it was interesting that our villains were very human. But anyway, definitely, as a Stephen King fan, if you have not read that one, check it out. If it sounds like something you might like. Okay, so the last one I was able to squeeze in, because I'm not going to finish anything else unless I read like a really short book, like maybe some short stories or something. Or like a graphic novel. I don't have any graphic novels that I'm not going to get done in a day. Like, there is no way I'm going to get ElfQuest done in a day. But if I decide to get back into it. But I am going to. I just don't know when. In case Terry watches this. In case Terry decides to watch this video, I'm going to get back into ElfQuest, and I have read it. I just haven't read it in a while. Okay, so the last one I'm able to squeeze in is The Time of Contempt by Andrzej Sapkowski. And I think I said that right. I'm going by how I think Elliot Brooks said it. So if you count the short stories, this is the fourth book in the series. But if you don't count the short stories and just this main series, this main story, this is the second book in the series. So in this one we have Ciri is with Yennefer, and she's taken her to this sorcerer training school to leave her there to be trained as a sorcerer, but that's the last thing Ciri wants, because she doesn't want to be taken away from Yennefer or Geralt. And meanwhile, Geralt is wandering around fighting monsters like he always does, but he's also trying to find out about Ciri having the Elder Blood and what that means. And this whole time, everyone keeps telling him, this is the time of contempt. People are at war with each other. But eventually, he has to go back and find Yennefer and Ciri, and the three of them are reunited. But when they are reunited, Yennefer and Geralt must attend the secret meeting between the sorcerers, because the kings are no longer listening to them. And there's all these political machinations going on. The sorcerers, it's a bit of a dangerous situation for Geralt to be in, because he can't really protect himself. And they're all trying to negotiate and think of what's going to happen now, what their next move is going to be. And there's a lot of awkward moments for Geralt, because all the sorceresses are all flirting with Geralt, because they do not like Yennefer, they hate her and think she's got him on a leash. And everyone is trying to make Geralt their ally, and be like, you should pick our side and be on our side, and Geralt is still trying to remain neutral on the situation. And then eventually, betrayal happens, and like a mini battle in the meeting occurs. And Ciri and Yennefer's lives are at stake right now. So, that's probably a little bit better of a description than what I gave what I said on Goodreads. In fact, I don't think I really gave a summary. I just, because sometimes I'm just lazy and don't want to write a summary, because you can just look at a summary of what happens in the book on Goodreads, because they still give you a summary. But so this one, not a lot of action happens in this one. There's a little bit. Like, it starts with a messenger for one of the kings trying to tell the other one that Ciri, the young lion cub of Cintra, is dead. And so there's a little bit of that, and then there's a final battle confrontation towards the end of the book, like between all the sorcerers and stuff. And Geralt does fight a monster in this one, although we really don't see it. We mostly get the perspective of all the village people that he's supposed to save, that are being tormented by the monster. Now, I'm sure on the show, when we get to this point, we will probably actually see him fighting off the monster, because I think a lot of shows, they will do that if they turn a book series into a show. A lot of times I think they will take scenes that we were not, and the movies are the same way. They will take the scenes where we didn't see anything, and they will, knowing that the audience for a TV show and a movie is a little different than a book audience. They're more accepting of, we're not going to see this kind of stuff. They realize that, okay, we're trying to appeal to a more universal audience, so we need to show this kind of stuff, this kind of action. Like, that's the problem with the Twilight books, is that we are in Bella's head the whole time. So, like, all the action stuff we don't get to see, because usually she's being kept in hiding, or like she's wounded or something, so she doesn't get to see a lot of action, not until the last book. But, so I imagine we will see that scene playing out where he's fighting the monster in this village. We also meet the Wild Hunt in this one. We find they come after Ciri and they try to lure her to join them, because they're like, you have elder blood, so you're one of us. So they're creepy. They're really creepy. They're like a cult to me. But I did like the scenes that, even though they weren't action-packed, I did find them very interesting to see Geralt and the awkwardness of him interacting with all these sorceresses who are talking about him and talking about how Yennefer has got him on the leash. She's got him wrapped around her finger, and they all want to seduce him and everything. And I'm just like, good luck with that. And it's so awkward and so funny, and it's also very interesting how all these people are trying to get him on their side and be like, you can't remain neutral forever. You gotta choose a side. And it kind of reminds me of another story. I don't know if it's a movie or a TV show where someone is being told, you have to pick a side. And I can't remember which one it is. Which one I'm thinking of, where it's like that. It will come to me after I finish filming this, I guarantee you that. But, and like I said, this is not the one I was thinking of, but he kind of, like I said, I kind of see a similarity between him and Lightsong, except for Geralt's more grumpy than Lightsong. But they kind of have that whole, like, trying to be, like, remain neutral and be like, I don't care, I'll just do what I want to do. But I also love Geralt and Yennefer's relationship with Ciri and how they're like her parents now, because her real parents are dead. They're the closest thing she has to a mom and dad. And she learns from both of them. Like, she learns how to be a witcher, all the fighting skills that she gets from being training as a witcher. And then with Yennefer, she learns all these magic skills and all these different spells, and each of the skills that she learns helps her in different ways and helps her in different situations. And also, like, I love how bratty she is, and how much, and not in an annoying way, like how she's very feisty and just like thinking, you will not touch me, you stay away from me. And she's not someone that you can mess with, and will defend herself and won't let people walk all over her. And there's this one point where she ends up with this group of outsiders that are dressed like elves. At first I thought they were elves, but then you are told that they actually are just people that dress like elves. These young teenagers that let Ciri join them. And it actually this group of people, they call themselves rats. They kind of remind me, first of all, I thought about, in one of the episodes of Ghost Whisperer, where Melinda must help a group of ghost children because the home where they live is being torn down. And they also made me think of, I don't know if any of you guys have seen American Tail, the anime movie about the little mouse that gets lost. He gets lost in the New York City in the first one, American Tail, and the second one he gets lost in the Old West. But in the American Tail, towards the end of the movie, he runs into a group of orphan kids, and the rats kind of reminded me of those kids. Although I don't see those kids ever trying to take advantage of Fievel the way one of the kids does with Ciri. He crosses a very inappropriate line, and she's so terrified. But like, I can see why it's not every Witcher reader's favorite. Like, I think both Elliot Brooks and Daniel Green, it's not their favorite in the series. But it is very interesting, because it's very much a setup book, I feel like. Like, it's setting up what's going to happen the rest of the series. Like, a lot of exposition, a lot of explaining things to you and setting up what's going to happen. Like, characters just talking throughout. Like I said, there's not a lot of action, there's a lot of talking. The characters interacting with each other and making these decisions and realize, we're at war, people. We can't just sit here and do nothing. Which I feel like in a lot of, it's more something that would happen like in the middle of a book or in the beginning of a book, but not like, it wouldn't be the whole book. Like, I could see where this book feels like it could be in a part of one of the other novels. Like, it shouldn't be a separate novel. But I still like it. Like, I think I gave it 3 stars. I was caught between giving it 3 or 4 stars. Because unfortunately Goodreads does not have half stars. Because I still think it was very good, and the scenes where the characters were just talking were very interesting to read about. I also, what I like about Sapkowski's stories is that they are not that long. Like, his novels, not the short stories. I mean, the short stories aren't that long because they're short stories, but like, there's not that many chapters, but the individual chapters are really long, and in this case, I don't mind as much, and I think it helps that this is a fantasy. But okay, now, of course, I still feel the way I feel about the characters so far. I love all the characters, even some of the new characters. Like I said, I love Yennefer and Geralt because they try so hard not to care, and they really do care a lot for Ciri, and are trying to be good parents to her. But, they are not the best examples for parents. But they really do care about her. And I don't care what the other characters say. I'm pretty sure that Yennefer does love Geralt in her own way. Like, I don't think she's using him. Which, I don't know if that's how you're supposed to think about her or not. Or maybe you're supposed to believe that she's using him. I do not know. But a lot of the other characters are saying, oh, she's only using them. using him, but I don't know if it's because they just don't. But I feel like it's just because they don't like her. They don't trust her. But what's great about the show, though, is what I've seen so far of season 1. I mean, I know the show has problems, but in season 1, we at least get Jennifer's perspective, and we kind of see that there's more to her than meets the eye. Wow, unlike the books, we don't know a lot about her. I think we do get her background, though. I think eventually we're going to get her background in one of the books. I don't know when, but I believe I've heard from Elliot that there's going to be some backstory revealed about Yennefer. But this was so great and so fun. I'm really enjoying the series. Like I said, this was not the best one in the series so far, but it was still pretty good. Okay, so that's what I read in May, and as you know, I already put up a summer TBR video. Currently, I am reading. I finally can get back to David Copperfield. The last thing I read is David's mother sadly has passed away, and he's dealing with that. I don't know what's going to happen with him. I don't know if he's going to, if his stepfather and step-aunt are going to claim him. Part of me kind of hopes they don't, because they wouldn't care about him, and he would not have a good life if he just lived with them. I want him to go with Pegati, and I do not know how to say her name, to go with her and stay with her family. But I don't know. I'm very nervous about what's going to happen to that kid, so I gotta read that one. And I did start reading, I finally got back into reading this one, Carnival for the Dead, by David Huston, and I believe this is kind of a spin-off to an already existing series, which is like a cop story, and I don't know if I'll ever read that. I might just stick with just reading this one. But it's a story about this woman named Teresa Lupa. It's her and her mom. They live in Rome, I believe, and she finds out from her that her favorite aunt, Sophia, has disappeared, and her mom believes she's dead because she's gotten into a lot of dangerous situations before, has get to a lot of trouble before. So Teresa and her mom go to Venice, where her aunt Sophia was last seen. And while there, in her apartment, she discovers a mysterious manuscript. And Teresa has hope that her aunt is still alive. So I read a little bit more last night before I went to bed. Well, I guess in a way it was early in the morning. It was early this morning I read a little bit. Because I think it was after midnight. But like I said, I wanted to read this one because I wanted to throw something different. Because I feel like I don't read a lot. I like the horror genre, but I don't read enough of horror. Now, this, I don't think it's traditional horror, like monster horror. It's more like, horror like Full Stars, or Ruth Ware, where, like, there's a mystery involved. It has a thriller aspect to it. Although, with the title, I assumed it was going to be supernatural. It was going to have, like, a paranormal aspect to it, but not according to Goodreads. And it kind of makes me think of a Dan Brown book a little bit, with the whole history of this European country being involved and stuff, and the whole mythology and superstitions and all that. But a little bit more of this today. So I'm going to focus on both these books today. I'm gonna read both these two books today, and now that the sun is out, I might be able to well. It is kind of clouded, but I'm probably gonna read these ones. Maybe sit outside and read them. Okay, so Oh, and by the way, I'm gonna show you. So. I don't know if I showed you these books in the last time, but I have these that I finally got Uprooted, which was on my list, my Amazon wish list, which I've already read. I read a library copy of it. This is also Beauty and the Beast retelling, where in this village they are being trapped in their village by this creepy forest, and the only thing protecting them from this forest is this mysterious wizard who lives in the tower, who calls himself the dragon. And he will protect them, but at the cost of that, every 10 years, their village must send one of their girls to live with him and train with him. And our main character, Agnieszka, assumes that her best friend, who's very sweet, and Kezia, that she's very sweet, very beautiful, and graceful, and brave, that she will be the one that will be chosen by the dragon. But, surprise, surprise, to both her and the dragon in the village, it is our main character, Agnieszka, who is chosen to go with the dragon. I remember really loving this, and, I really like her, this is Naomi Novik. I love her retelling so far. I wonder what she's going to do next, if she's going to do another one like this, but I really like it. She's also the one who writes the Temeraire series, which I also love, but I would love for her to see her do more of these. I don't know what she will cover next, though, but I think it'd be very interesting. I want to see, I have thought about what other fairy tales she could do, that aren't as popular, like The Princess and the Pea, or, The Little Mermaid, although that one's pretty popular. The Three Dancing Princesses, although that one has now become popular, is starting to get noticed more. The Prince and the Pauper, Rapunzel. I'm trying to think of ones. It's very hard though, because there's so many, and ones that I probably don't even know about. But yeah, I remember really liking it, and now I can read it again with not feeling rushed, because I got it from the library. And the time I read it was actually around the time that Terry came to visit, finally came here for the first time. Not the first time we hung out in person, but the first time she came to here once we moved here. That's when I got it, because I remember I got it because I didn't use the library back in Maryland, because it was in driving distance. But yeah, I'm kind of almost tempted to read that one now, but I'm also tempted to read one of these other books that I have. Okay, so I also have these two. See, these are the editions I absolutely love. I love these editions. These are I think they're just sold at Books A Million. These are I guess they're in Sweetwater Press. I guess that's the people who make these, Sweetwater Press. It says it right there. I had loaned my copy of Jane Eyre to my cousin. It was a regular mass market paperback, because I still like buying mass market paperbacks because they're cheap and they're easy to travel with. Although paperbacks like this size are pretty easy to travel with too, but and they're better made as well. But I had loaned my copy to my cousin, and I don't know what happened. And it's a situation where now that as we become adults, we don't see each other as much, because she has her job. I don't drive, so it's not like even if I don't work as much as she does, I can't just go up and see her, and she can't come down here to see me. So it's kind of hard for us to hang out. And then when we do hang out, I never remember to be like, hey, can you give me back my copy of my book? And besides, so I never got it back from her, but that also means I can get a new copy, so I bought this copy. And I really like this cover. I don't know why. I like the bright colors. That's probably why I like middle grade covers too, because they're always so bright. But in case you've been living under a rock and don't know what this book is about, it's about this girl named Jane, and her parents died when she was little, so she lives with her aunt and uncle. Her uncle is kind to her and everything, but he eventually dies. And her aunts and cousins they bully her, they treat her horribly. Oh my god, I just forgot a book. I also read Mansfield Park, or listened to it, because people get weird when you say, oh, I read it, when you really listen to it on an audiobook. I forgot. And the reason why actually this reminded me of it, because when I was reading the Fanny Price's story, reminded me a little bit of Jane Eyre. But yeah, that is a Jane Austen about this girl named Fanny Price. Her mom married beneath her. She lived, and her mom, she's a lot of siblings, so her mom decides to send her to live with her aunt and uncle, Lady Bertram and Sir Thomas Bertram. Her brother's in the Navy, by the way. So she goes to live with them, and her aunt and uncle are like, they're not outright horrible to her, but they kind of ignore her and expect her to be a good, obedient little child. And her cousins just ignore her, or they bully her. They treat her like a servant. And the worst person to her is her other aunt, who I do not remember her name. Which I should look that up, but then that would waste time. So, her other aunt treats her horribly. And she ends up... So, Fanny's only comfort is Edmund, who treats her kindly and makes sure she's taken care of. They talk all the time. They're best friends. They seek each other's advice. They have a lot of things in common, like what they like in literature and stuff. And she, little unbeknownst to her, she starts to fall in love with him. And but one day, when Sir Thomas is away in Antigua dealing with the slave trade there, these a young brother and sister couple, the Crawfords, Mary and Henry Crawford, show up and winnow and charm the whole family except for Fanny. And everyone is enchanted by them. Henry flirts with both Mariah and Maria, even though one of them is engaged to Mr. Rushworth. And I can never remember which sister it was that was engaged to Rushworth. And Rushworth. And they eventually convince the family to... Oh, and Mary flirts with Edmund, who, she thinks he's more interesting and more worth her time. And so the only problem she has with him is he wants to be a clergyman, and she does not think that's a great profession. And tries to get him to change his mind about that profession. But she's unsuccessful, thank God. But Edmund still has these feelings for her. He's enchanted by her. He admires her, and she even pretends to be good friend, really care about and help Fanny. She becomes friends with Fanny because she knows that Edmund really cares about Fanny. And eventually, the Crawfords convince the family to put on this very inappropriate, very racy play called Lover's Vows. And Edmund, being a clerk, doesn't approve of this play. He knows that his father won't approve. Fanny doesn't approve either, but she doesn't say anything. But she is the only person in that family that is respectful and kind and does what she's told. And then eventually Edmund caves into doing the play because he doesn't want outsiders to know that his family is doing this play, because he thinks the solution is that he participate in it. And he also doesn't want, he sees that Mary is not comfortable working with a complete stranger, so he takes a major part in the play. And, things go from there. So, I really like this one. I'm not a fan of Persuasion. I thought Sense and Sensibility was pretty good, but it is my third favorite out of Austen's work. I definitely like this one better. It was more interesting, and Fanny was such an interesting main character because she's so passive. She's not very feisty. She has strong opinions and strong faith, but she's such a good, very sweet young lady, and does not, always does what she's told. Is very passive and, is very appreciative that her family, her relatives have taken her in and are raising her. And she's so grateful, but yet she is constantly reminded that she's ungrateful and she needs to be more appreciative. Like, when she first gets there, she's very upset about this. And her other aunt is like, how dare you get all upset about this? And then the two times in the story where she was not into the whole situation and said no was, well, first the family asked her to join the play, to participate in the play. They need a small, they have one part left, a small part left, and they're like, can you please do it? And it's not a speaking part, it's just someone, I think it's just a standing, and Thomas, her oldest cousin, is like, oh, I'll help you out, but she says, because, she says no, she can't act, and she doesn't want to act. And she knows that this isn't an appropriate play. She's not comfortable with performing this because she knows her uncle would be furious. that he would be furious that they're doing this play, and she doesn't want to be part of that. She doesn't want to make that mistake and get him upset. And also, acting is scary. You know, if you're, especially since Fanny is such a shy and reserved person, and they just keep pushing her, and eventually Edmund also is trying to encourage her to do it, which, because he tries to encourage her, she eventually attempts to do the play. But, oh my god, her aunt is like, how dare you? You should be more appreciative. They're willing to give you this part. You should help your cousins out. I want to smack her so much. I wish I could remember her name, but I hated her so much. I can't even remember her name. And, she's like, oh, and I wanted to be like, oh, if you think it's so fun and so great, then why don't you do it? But of course, Fanny would never say that. But I'd be very tempted to say that if I were her. But, oh my god, I mean, no one realizes how selfless Fanny is, and how appreciative she is, and how grateful she is, and how she always does what she's told. She never questions anything. Yet, this time, and then the second time, is when Henry Crawford proposes to her, because he has to flirt with one of the girls, and when Maria and Julia, Edmund's two sisters, are gone, one of them has just got married, and the other one goes with them, he feels like, okay, I gotta flirt with someone. You know, and he tries. Fanny's the only young lady left, so he decides to, and plus, Fanny is a challenge to him. She doesn't immediately swoon at him at the sight of him. She's not enchanted by him like everybody else. I mean, she thinks he's a good actor, you know, and when he performs, she's maybe a little bit enchanted, but mostly she's not into him at all, and she knows he's a player deep down. And, she just is so, like, and then, like, when he proposes to her, she's, rejects him because she's not into him. She doesn't like him that way. She knows he's a player. She has no feelings for him. And her uncle is like, you are so ungrateful and selfish, and how could you reject him? Now, I can understand her uncle a little bit because, in this time, if she doesn't get married, then they're gonna have to take care of her. And they're worried about making sure she is provided for. And I can kind of understand his motives and stuff, and he's also blinded by Henry's charm and being all nice, and then Henry even gives, Fanny's brother visits when he's on leave, visits the Bertrams to see his sister, and he is kind of disappointed that he hasn't been promoted because he's worked so hard, and Henry, wanting to win over Fanny, gets her brother the job, gets her brother promoted. And her uncle's just like, you are being more appreciative and grateful. You're such a selfish girl. And it really breaks Fanny's heart because she always tries to be good. And she's already intimidated enough as it is by her uncle. And she's always trying so hard to be good and selfless and always doing what she's told, never questioning anything. But the two times that she questions things and that she's like, I don't want to do this, they get mad at her. And they call her selfish and ungrateful and unappreciative, and they piss me off. It pisses me off so much. But I also, like, Mary and Henry Crawford are such great antagonists. They're so manipulative and sinister. It's like, as the reader, you cannot trust these two people, but they're so clever and good at winning everybody else over and knowing how to be charming. And it's not until Mary Crawford slips towards the end that Edmund finally sees the light and realizes, you're not a good person. The way I looked at you before was all an illusion in the end. Like, you put on quite a show for me, and he realizes the truth of her true intentions. But oh my god, they were so good at manipulating everything. And then, oh my god, what Henry does to Fanny and he runs away with the one sister. I think he runs away the one that is married to Rushworth. He runs away with her. But in the 1998 movie, I'm guessing it was not included in the novel, but in the 1998 movie, she catches him and her cousin, actually sleeping together. And, of course, Fanny doesn't love him, but it still was a slap in the face to realize the guy was sleeping with her cousin. That, in the end, it was like a confirmation that he didn't really care about Fanny, and that he's just really doing it to spite her because he doesn't like getting rejected. Which, by the way, he had me, for a second, I was convinced that maybe he's gonna change and that he really does genuinely love her. For a second, then I realized Wait, what am I thinking? Of course he's not. He's a player. But it was really good, and Edmund is so frustrating. Oh my god, like on the one hand I like him and everything, but on the other hand he's so frustrating because he's so blinded by his delusions of Mary Crawford. You know, and in a way he kind of takes when Mary Crawford comes into the picture, he kind of ignores Fanny and and just kind of treats her like doesn't exactly treat her like everyone else does, but he does start to ignore her and focus more on Mary Crawford. And it's like, oh my god, dude, you have this perfectly sweet girl in front of you that loves you, and you are choosing this other manipulative witch over Fanny. Now of course it's Jane Austen, so the writing is great. And I always when I read Jane Austen's works, when I do read it, I'm like, oh, I feel so smart that I'm reading Jane Austen. Okay, so back to this. Like I said, I remember that because Fanny reminds me a lot of Jane Eyre in her personality. But anyway, so I didn't finish telling you what this one is about, although most people probably know what it's about. So Jane, she gets sent by her aunt to this school, this religious school, and it's by a headmaster who sucks at the job. Her only friend there is Helen, although she makes friends with one of the teachers there. Helen gets tuberculosis because the stupid headmaster, Mr. Brocklehurst, is not very good at taking care of the building, and half the kids and half the little girls in that building die. And eventually things do get better, and Jane, as she gets older, is like an adult. She gets a job as a teacher there, but then she decides to seek a new situation and puts an advertisement in the newspaper. Sorry, I like saying the British version of words. So she gets a job in the newspaper. She puts an advertisement in the paper, and then it is found by a Miss, I can't remember her name, by this housekeeper of Thornfield Hall, this famous manor house where this little French girl lives, and she is the ward of a Mr. Rochester. And so Jane becomes this little French girl's her governess, and of course she and Rochester meet and fall in love. So this is such a beautiful story. It's a coming of age story for this time period. It's beautiful. I love it. It's one of my favorites. Jane Eyre is such an amazing heroine. She goes through so much. And I would love to talk about this novel, but this video is getting really long. So I also got, like I said, I got Bleak House by Charles Dickens. Which the only thing I can tell you is that I think there's a will involved in the idea of the ownership of a house or something, or who's gonna get what from this dude that just died, something like that. But I can't tell if this is I don't think it is. But, oh, I wonder if you can get these, because this is printed in the UK, so I wonder if you can get these editions in the UK and other stores, because I would love to get more of these. I would so buy, if I ever got a chance to go to England, I would definitely buy these editions of books. I would definitely have to buy some classics that are in this edition. I would have to buy at least 2 or 3 of them. But anyway, but yeah, I had a mass market paperback edition, and unfortunately, My Books A Million, the only ones of this edition, the only Dickens that they have in this edition are the ones that I already have. They have this one, they have, although I don't have A Christmas Carol technically, not in a separate thing. I have A Christmas Carol in an omnibus, which I thought about for a second, buying it. Which maybe one day I will, so that I can easily read bring it with me when we see our, like, maybe I will, so that one day when the boys are old enough, my nephews, maybe I can have a better edition to read it in, a nicer one. That's a little more easier to read, because let's face it, this is a lot easier to read than a small mass market paper. Well, not necessarily, but this is easier to read than the hardback omnibus that I have. They're fancy books by that you can get at Barnes and Noble. Those really nice hardback editions that have look like old-fashioned book covers. But it's not as easy. This is easier to read, or even a mass market paperback is easier to read than those ones. But anyway, so I ended up buying these as well. I decided to go ahead. So they only had this one. They had A Christmas Carol. They had Great Expectations, David Copperfield. And I think that's all of them that they had. So I'm like, oh, I already have those. And then I decided while walking around, I was like, I really like these editions of these books. So you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and buy one of the ones I already have. And Bleak House is one of his chunkier books, one of his longer novels. It is, and this edition is 800 pages. This is only 800, because the last person, I should look at my mass market paperback edition, see how many pages that one is, because I thought someone had said that, I think it's over 1,000 pages, but no, this is actually only 800. Yeah, it exactly ends on 800 pages. The only problem with this one is that, the only problem with getting these ones is they don't have a index or anything at the back, or notes or anything. Some classic editions have notes in the back and stuff and indexes. Although this is a British book, so it's in English. It's not like a translated work. It's not like Count of Monte Cristo, which Count of Monte Cristo, they had another one too. I have thought about buying another copy of Count of Monte Cristo, because that copy is pretty big. It's a little bit bigger, a little bit taller than this one. But you know what? I'm gonna stick with the one I have. So yeah, I just wanted to tell you about these. So that means I have, I think, four books in this edition. I should hint to my mom, I should tell that to my mom, although I like the Penguin editions. They're, not the mass market, but I should tell my mom this also, maybe around Christmas time. I like these editions as well, just to hint at her. I've seen, we have them at Books A Million, but it's not a huge selection either, so, anyway. So yeah, I just wanted to tell you about that I got those. I'm very excited about those. Oh, and let me go ahead and, the other gift I wanted which, actually, no, I think I did tell you about this one. The other gift that I received that it took a long time to get here was this one. It was, it's the first book in this Anthony Trollope's Palliser series, or the Parliamentary series, which is about Parliament, the British Parliament, the British government. It's the first book. And I like that it's, like I said, it's in this. I like that. Actually, I think I did talk about this one. Sorry if I'm repeating myself with that. But, that's the first book in that series. Okay, so this video is gotten a little too long, because I'm just bad at summing up things. So if you guys like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, click subscribe if you haven't already, and click the bell notification below if you want to see when I post more videos. And also, if you would like to, as always, if you'd like to share what you're currently reading, feel free to share in the comments below what you're reading. If you've read any of these books, what are your thoughts on them? I'd be very curious. And I will talk to you all later. Alright, bye! Nope. Damn it.